green room, because that's a great segue in. Okay, because you know, it was such a unusual experience to come in on Tuesday morning and wish everybody a happy new year, which of course it was. But the Buffalo player, of course, had the incident. Well, when you say shocking, Don, once again, let me know we're in the green room because there's too many segues. Good. Yeah, I know, in the green room. And listen, that's what we're talking about coming in. I come in on Tuesday morning after a great vacation and, excuse me, wishing everybody a happy new year, but everybody having seen what happened the night before to, you know, DeMar.
Yeah.
And listen, here's my impression as an ER doc and where I take the goodness and the glory of 2023. We were just talking about how society has changed from, as I call this, a cell phone or a car phone or whatever the heck it was, you know, phone. But when I started in emergency medicine biz, Ruta, I mean, you know, there were defibrillators, of course, in the ERs, in ambulances, but they had not yet gotten out into society. And I will say that one of the best, and probably if you look at the world of emergency medicine, life-saving, of course, is what people think we do all the time. You know, not true. You know, 34 years in the box. I mean, I surely saved, you know, some lives, but it was the onset of the defibrillator to come out into the public domain.
I know you wanted that as actually an idea at one point. Like,
I take pride as an emergency clinician knowing that that research has been shown. The more defibrillators there are, the closer they are. So it was the trained personnel, quite frankly, and I give all the props to our first responders, those paramedics, the docs on the sidelines, of course, the technology of the AED. That hopefully, listen, this player will open his eyes, hopefully today, and say, oh my God, you know, what the heck, you know, we don't know yet, but it's all about the brain.
But yeah, I was going to say, because you're an ER doctor, and so like, he supposedly died twice. They said, like, he literally died twice, and twice they had to bring him back. Do you think he's going to be okay? Like,
well, we'll see.
It's like, I mean,
well, there's a couple things to say about it. I reread it, and there's been a report and an update that the uncle actually, when he was talking about a second resuscitation, what he was actually most likely referring to, we don't know for sure, was when you get into an ICU, you go into a resuscitation mode again. So when you're out in the field, you know, everything is in disarray, IV lines here, there, whatever. So when you get into the trauma bay, the they do. Sometimes you re-intubate or, you know, so who knows what happened. If there was a second full defibrillation need, which means the heart went back out of rhythm, it's not unusual after an arrest like that because the heart muscle is still lacking oxygen. There was still some degree of injury, insult. There may be a congenital malformation that this all had to do with. There's a lot of assumptions. And may I just say this? And we try to stay on the upside in the green room, but we know the underbelly of social media and this and that, and the inference that maybe this had to do with the vaccines or this. And I won't be, oh no, I'll be honest with you. It was the last thought that I had, the absolute last thought, but people have been utilizing this.
You know, they politicize this to begin with.
So my point is, it's multifactorial. It probably was a comedio cortis, as it's called, which is a blow, which can happen, and it has in baseball, in hockey, from auto accidents. You can take an airbag, and it's a microsecond of timing and precise location thing, and it's known to happen. But once again, the glory of it is the AED, the trained personnel to use it, and it's just an example of where we're at in 23. And listen, I am angry this morning because I was supposed to speak today at noon. Well, no, listen. So this is our classic first of the year, New Year's resolutions. What are our goals for the year? And I was really starting out the year with two very exciting events this week. One that's still going to happen. I'm speaking to the Cleveland Cannabis College tomorrow, and it's a very well-established thing up there. They've had it for 4 or 5 years. Many people in the Ohio industry come out of there, and Clevelander that I am, you know, believe me when I tell you, I can't wait. So that one has not been canceled. The original date for that was the day of Ian, had to be canceled. So it's a redo. But I was supposed to, and I was honored by this, everybody, and it's really significant. The West Virginia Medical Cannabis Advisory Board, I believe they're called, actually has something in front of them calling for a 10% THC cap on all products. Their subgroup for doctors amongst the larger group on the board has already voted unanimously to endorse this 10% THC cap. I was reached out to by Rusty Williams, the activist patient on the board, to speak in favor of the plant and patients. And I would have been, and I got the email 2 days ago that it was canceled. They said canceled. I hope they mean postponed.
Yeah, I hope postponed.
I was going to be their first practicing clinician in medical cannabis to ever appear before the board.
See, and that is so critical. I'm sorry, but like they need that. I'm sorry. Who else are they going to get this data from? And who else is going to speak to them on a level of seeing patients?
Well, listen, Rusty does a great job, but they never had a doctor voice. So for example, they had a vote, and the great thing about the modern era is I can watch all the past meetings on YouTube, and they are on YouTube. So I watched their debate about home grow, okay? And the doctors were against home grow. They all voted against home grow.
Virginia, you don't think they're home growing somewhere in the mountains?
But the point is, you have to understand that their doctors come from the perspective of the illicit world of cannabis. The leader of the group is an addiction psychologist.
Okay.
He admits that his goal is to avoid the pill mill crisis, okay, when it comes to these higher potencies of cannabis, right? And their expert that they had at their last subgroup meeting was a addiction psychologist also from Colorado, who within her presentation literally states that cannabis is not medicine, and anybody that uses a product greater than 10% is only using it to get high.
Wow. She needs to, first of all, I'd like to know where she gets her research
Well,
from.
listen,
Secondly, how many patients has she actually seen that have utilized medical cannabis?
Listen,
Let's get some statistics here from her.
so my plan was to go into this, not necessarily going after them on the research side, because if you ask, where does she get her research from? Well, they get the research from their patients, their addiction psychologists, their pain management doctors. They come from a perspective where cannabis has been an illicit substance of abuse in their world, right? And what I want to say to them is, listen, guys, you're always going to have something to do. There's alcohol, there's opiates, there's Ativan, Xanax, there's a whole there's a small slice of abuse in the cannabis world. And I'm here to tell you there's not. And if there is, well, there's not in the patients that we see in our clinic. Let's talk about goals for this year. So I'm angry. Hopefully they'll reschedule it. Don was going to help me put a great slide presentation together, and I'm going to call it, Don, the new presentation. What was the quote? You can't undo what the eyes have seen.
Yeah, can't unsee what you see.
Right, we're going to get the exact quote, but that's what it's going to be, because we're surveying.
We're doing a survey.
Patients. So let's talk about goals for the year.
So I think this is a phenomenal goal. We decided to go ahead and do surveys on our own patients, since we have
We've done it in the past.
We have, but we have such a solid patient base. And before we left it up to the patient to kind of do, and we don't get as much feedback as we'd want. This time we're actually doing the intake up front, and we're actually gathering data. And I have to say, like, the data that we just received, and we probably have right now maybe 75, and we're going to hopefully do this over the next course of the next few months, and we're hopefully going to have thousands of statistics here. There's a couple things that are, like, I was talking to Don today, that are kind of sticking out to me. One was a lot of commentaries about lowering or going off blood pressure meds, being on medical cannabis. Obviously, there were a lot of comments saying, I no longer use opioids thanks to cannabis. And even over the counter things such as Advil, Aleve, they're not using that in sleep aids. So for the ones that are saying, it's not medicine, I beg to differ, because starting to look at just data that we're getting.
So getting into the research, where does her data come? So my point is, they can have their research, they can have their studies, and I respect them. But they have to look at the perspective from where they come from, right? Versus my perspective of 35 years in the emergency medicine biz, and now 6 years, everybody. Yeah, we just celebrated our anniversary. I know. Right.
Incredible.
It's like 4
as
It
well.
is, you know, and what it is, it's a step-by-step process where we know what we know.
Yeah.
Now, our data that we're acquiring, unfortunately, and that's why I wasn't necessarily going to go up to West Virginia arguing research and studies with them, because they're not going to accept our stuff anyway. What we're gathering is survey, research, data, intake data, info. They want double-blinded research with placebos and a single substance and
Sure.
patients treating only one condition.
One day we'll do that. Like, you know, I have to say, like, I am reaching out, and actually anybody that's listening, because I know we have a big base now. And hey, I had 700 people listening to our show last week just on my feed. So for those that are listening, I know you're national. If anybody out there knows or can help me do a grant to do research, I would love that information. So if anyone out there is able to do that, I did reach out to a consortium.
Yeah, there's things going on in Florida, and we'll see.
I'm
But the
reaching out
point
to
is, our
everybody to do that.
patients are wealth
They
of
are. We need
information
such a
and
huge
data in
thing.
the world. It's on the ground. And that's why really the survey questions that we actually are asking about quality of life,
Mhm.
family acceptance,
Sure.
you know.
Yeah, but we're also gathering, I think this time around, there's a couple of things that I really liked about the survey that we're doing now. One, we're defining gender and age, which I think is a critical. Then we're actually now, because we have such a larger array of medicine, now we have concentrates and edibles. And what we're going to start doing is incorporating also, have you noticed like a change in your habits? Have you gotten off of opioids? Have you gone off of sleep aids? So we're going to start gathering that data. And we're also looking at side effects, which we didn't in the past. So this time we're looking at patients, do they have dry mouths? Do they have coughing, loss of appetite, increase of appetite? So we're actually going to get a lot more data. And I think that data, like, I'm excited because I'm a data person. So I was telling Don, I'm like, I love statistics. So for me, I'm in my glory because now I get to analyze stuff.
No, I mean, it's a good yin and the yang because
Mhm.
I'm not a
See,
researcher and people know that. Say that.
And for me, I'm a stats girl. So for me, I love it.
Let's give a great shout out to our staff. Listen,
Yeah.
we just got through holiday season.
Yeah.
We're still suffering storm-wise, everybody,
Yeah.
you know. Patients are still recovering. What we get a lot is now hassling with the insurance companies and,
Oh my God.
you
that's like
know,
not
of
never
course,
ending.
I know, hear it every day.
To talk about this. So Saturday, this is an exciting thing. So Sarasota Memorial is hosting this annual huge gala
To goals.
and getting back to our goals for 2023. So we actually are one of the sponsors. We're sponsoring the firefighters, I believe. And so we're going to be up in lights at Sarasota Memorial's gala. And I think this is such a huge step for 2023 that we're going to be, our name will be in it upfront to all the doctors who are going to see this and see that cannabis is coming into the mainstream, into the hospital systems. And I
And
actually,
people say, why do you do the things you do?
this is what,
And that's
because
one of
we're
the-
trying to
right.
lead, we're leading.
Yeah.
I think honestly, and this is something kudos to our practice. I think we are in the forefront. I think we do take initiatives to be a leader of medical cannabis in the state. And I think trying to start the like hospitals realizing that this is something that's coming. I think you said it, and I agree. We need to make a lot of connections that night and start talking to the hospital boards and saying like, look, you have to, do you have a plan for patients who want medical cannabis? And I have to say, I did some research and this is very interesting. Kudos to UPenn hospital systems, Ivy League school, great UPenn.
Sure.
Their hospital system has now allowed, regardless of federal,
Yeah.
they have allowed, and they actually put into writing, if prior to surgery, a caregiver will be allocated to a patient, a caregiver and their family, they can come in and administer medical cannabis to their family member. That's huge.
Yeah.
Because
is that Jefferson? Is that,
I don't know
but
if
yeah,
it's 100%. I know it's
but they're very,
hospital
yeah,
systems,
they're
and they're huge. I know that
extremely
they're
proactive.
very proactive, and more so than even California or
Yeah.
Colorado hospitals. I was so proud of UPenn. I was like, wow, I'm like, huge statement. There's also another school, another teaching college.
The point is it's
that's gonna
happening
do it.
and we want to be at the
Starting.
forefront
We
of it.
wanna
So
be
we want
at
to
it.
talk about goals and, you know, this is one of my long-term goals because it's going to take, you know, a little bit of time to get it done. But I would love to be the doctor that when a patient in the hospital would ask somebody about medical cannabis, say, you know what, we have somebody on staff.
Yes, that you
And I
can
would get a
access.
consult. I would get a consult. Okay. It doesn't need to just be me. There could be other doctors on staff.
But I want you
you
want
know,
somebody that's.
I would love to be the head of the department.
But I also, you think you should have somebody like yourself, and this isn't just because of.
Well, I will see the patient in the hospital room,
It's
has that initial consultation and their families,
Yes.
do the teaching. I will come and teach a grand rounds or any rounds if invited. So I'm looking forward to the gala.
I think
It's a tux thing.
It's a tux
and
thing.
I know.
Thing. It's gonna be foofy.
I don't do that very often.
No, but this is with a purpose, and honestly.
It is with a purpose, and
with
it's a first responder, right?
Yeah.
The first responders are the benefactors. and-
First responders, and also it's actually it's first responders are huge as far as sponsorships go, but it's also, this year is also dedicated to the new Cancer Research Center, which is
Awesome.
coming into SMH. You're building a whole tower for cancer research and cancer patients. So with that goes hand in hand with.
We do. We
cannabis.
want
So
to expand the center of excellence.
We
you
are
know.
the center of excellence.
Center of excellence.
We are, and this is a huge goal, and I think it's a great move for us, and I think it's a wise move for us, and I think to set ourselves in the forefront and put ourselves into that ring and arena where medical cannabis is coming, and it's coming to a hospital near you, and it's going to take a few years, but we need to develop goals.
We do. We need to
guidelines,
be
and
proactive and reactive.
Absolutely.
Because we're always going to be better off that way. And it just leads in, and listen, we didn't go politics first,
Oh,
but we
gosh.
can surely go there
Let's
now.
to the swamp, shall we?
Well, and listen, Florida, of course,
Republicans.
Florida this year is going to be a March to May session. So we're going to have our committee weeks coming up, here in Florida. And
I want to ask you, have you heard anything on any bills or anything for getting at least telehealth on?
no, so I mean, we really haven't heard much of all. I guess my first question would be, and I suspect I may be personally remiss for not knowing this, but now that Nikki Fried, of course, is out of office, we have, and this is, listen, past Senate President Wilfred Simpson now, and he's going to have power, to the extent, and we don't really know how he views, from the how he views the hemp world, what they're going to do about Delta 8 and the others.
Which does need regulation.
Whether the Medical Cannabis Advisory Committee that was set up under Nikki is going to continue to exist.
Yeah.
So maybe that's
still that or gone.
quick, easy letter. But I do reach out to, now Commissioner Simpson to visit us at any time, of course, if he wants to learn. We really should. And I think once his goals go and its resolutions go, I think one goal and one resolution that our patients can always count on us will be to be in Tallahassee, to be tip of the spear, to have our finger on the pulse. What that tells me this year is that I don't think that we're going to see much of any action or activity in cannabis world unless the legislature decides that they want to, quote unquote, supersede, the vote of the people. That's going to come next year. I doubt it, because I think they have so much else to do, and our governor has his eyes perhaps on any number of various goals.
I think it's going to be on the White House,
but telehealth, getting that back would surely be one legislative goal.
It's huge for us. And I think we need to really work on this, because I think telehealth is something that we should be able to do, especially at least even if it's with exceptions. Like,
well, we don't know when it's going to happen with exceptions. It's great. I love that RFP for telehealth.
Yeah, no, it really, if a patient's immobile, they're cancer stricken, they're in hospice, something like those. I'm sorry, those should be exceptions where it's
but I can add, working 2 jobs, and I can add, doesn't want to drive on 75 and take those risks as you do every day. Listen, there's still the triple demic. There's still the triple demic out there. We do have patients coming in wearing masks. We're fully respectful of it. I was at my
doctor yesterday afternoon, and almost every patient was masked up, and even their staff was all masked up. And K95s, all of them. For sure.
So just from the practice side, and just getting back to our efforts with the hospital system and telehealth, what I've learned as I've aged, and listen, I have a personal, what do they call them?
Resolution?
Yes, resolution. Wow.
Sounds like
because I showed you my ganglia cyst at the base of my thumb yesterday, and it's a nuisance.
It is a nuisance.
So I'm also kind of look within myself a little bit this year, maybe do a little bit better self,
I'm doing it
care.
myself this year too. I'm
you know.
dancing, and then I'm gonna do a lot more exercising. My
Right.
goal is to lose a lot of weight because I've gained way too much, and it's time to get healthier. So
Well,
that's my goal.
so getting healthier is just a state of mind for sure. It is. It's calories in, calories out. You know,
and like
it's taking my blood pressure medicine every day.
Yeah,
you know,
like
that type of
basic
stuff. But when you have a little nuisance type of thing,
Yeah,
you
that's
know,
annoying.
like you can put up with it. I know.
it's annoying after a while. Then you play with it because it's there, and you're like,
I know. It is. So also, to the extent of where we're going to go with the focus, and what I was getting back to is that we got to kind of take care of the things that we can take care of within our
us.
own house, our biz, you know, our lives ourselves, because what we know is that globally, be it Florida with the supermajority
Yeah.
or what's going on
What's
right
going
now
on
in
in
Washington,
DC, which we have to talk about.
you know,
What the heck?
well, so what
Matt Gates, can I
what-
just ask,
what
where
my son,
did Eddie Munster get that power from? That's what I wanna
what my son explains to me, and I want to give a shout out to Josh and my grandkids in Houston. What my son points out to me is that these 20 are somehow standing up to try to change
Yeah,
such nonsense. And it's hard to argue with my son when he comes up with things that just make sense. Who wants to get a 400-page bill 30 minutes before you're supposed to vote on it? And that's how it goes.
That happens.
It does. Well, that's the rules. That's the
rules,
rules. And that's what
yeah.
he's saying. Because these are the subtleties that I don't understand. That's one of the fundamentals that they're standing up for, is that to change that rule.
Okay, but you know why that rule exists? It's so
I'm
that
sure there's reasons.
there
Of course.
are, and the biggest one is so that you don't get bought off on a decision for your vote before, because if you get the documents right before you vote,
Uh.
you don't have outside influences
Sure.
of all of the lobbyists sitting there handing you envelopes for you to vote. That's the reason why
Sure,
it
sure.
exists. And that's
So
pure.
ostensibly they're holding on for these rules changes.
Yeah,
Well, you know, it's just, it's a complete distaste for McCarthy himself.
It is, and it's also.
And yeah, Matt Gates is, you
Gates.
know,
Oh.
well,
I have nothing good to say about the man. Like, honestly, why does Florida why do you keep electing him? Like, why? Like, the kid, he's like, to me, he's just like the schoolboy kid who just got lucky and got elected somehow. I really don't know. And he shouldn't be there. He really shouldn't.
but it's so ironic. It's so ironic of how these 20 are holding up the mechanisms, right, of government.
And so I hope that the Democrats take over. Good. You deserve to lose.
So
the House.
that's what I've been asking, is why wouldn't there be a coalition, right, of the center that can
They
come
should.
up with somebody?
Resolution.
And wouldn't that be a marvelous
Well,
and a
supposedly now there's some guy that
glorious
there is some guy that they're supposedly looking at it now today is supposed to come up but Trump, I don't remember his name, and Trump actually endorsed him yesterday. Trump endorsed McCarthy, then now all of a sudden is telling his 20 people to go again with this other guy. So I don't know.
And if we're talking feds, I mean, listen, we had Brady Cobb in the green room, and we talked about safe banking and all that, of course.
Yeah, which-
Complete and utter failure
Failure.
at the federal level. Nothing done. And when I say nothing, I mean nothing done.
Nothing.
And the only thing that has happened at the federal level was the signing of the research bill. That was the one thing that got to the president's desk and actually was signed, and it now allows for at least research to be done, you know, and that, once again, getting back to the West Virginia thing, because it still frosts me. And it better come back, because it was like the popping of an adrenaline
I
balloon.
know, honestly, you're like signing.
Well, because it's such it is because to be able to stand up for the patients, and I'm going to get on my soapbox for a second. The reason I really was not going to shower them with a bunch of research and studies and this and that, because they don't accept our research and our studies. It's not the type of research that can be done right now on cannabis because of the issues that we talk about. THC, CBD combinations, the presence of terpenes and flavonoids, each patient being different, treating multiple symptoms, right? So they're not studies that are going to fall into things they're going to imagine and believe anyway. But what we know is that patient after patient after patient comes in wanting those three simple things that they've never heard, Ruta. So the talk that I have, the 5D teaching visit with every single patient that comes in, and or the staff and Dr. Shreve and Trinketo, The point is that it's always fundamental to the extent of those 5 Ds. And they don't even understand who's walking in. Okay. They don't know that every single person wants to feel the best they can in the most natural, safe, plant-based, but most importantly, controllable way in
And they can
2023
control
that you can.
You know,
Patients control their cannabis.
I need to say
That's what's
something
going to
about
come up in the
this.
surveys.
And this, we have to do something about that, like in the surveys too, Don. I was just.
Well, the
now
wording of the questions are key, and I'm not that guy.
We're gonna do something, because the other thing that was interesting, and I did a lot of reading last night about hospitals, and there was a hospital system even in Colorado,
Right.
where the panel of physicians at the board of the hospital said, well, does it come in a pill form? Can you dose it? Do you have it as something? These are the kinds of questions. But the thing is, okay, so every patient is different. So this is the thing, like we have to start looking at that, because like you said, the patient controls their own meds and what makes them feel good.
Doctors don't like that.
They
Why are
don't.
you giving that? So it's funny as it is. Now that we're 6 years into the zone, and Don, you know this because you've been around Ruta 4 years now. As you get into different phases of the practice, there's different discussions that you have with the patient. So when they put the dose cap out, or there's the 10% THC cap. So there's different phases as we discuss. Okay. But that was always one of the early ones that I learned, is that doctors need to give up control.
I think it's control. Yeah.
Doctors need to give, and I haven't really circled that thought back. Okay. It is. It's one of the, listen, they're not taught it in med school.
No.
There's no residency program for it. It's completely against how doctors are trained
to give up the meds and write it, send it to.
But it's truly the education and the empowerment, okay, of the cannabis patient, who's coming in for the third thing, by the way, which is to be legal in their use. So I was surely going to circle in to the. It enrages me that the 4 doctors on the board, okay, of the 18 or whatever person board, okay, their little medical subgroup has already come out unanimously to support this 10% THC cap. And of course, the board today or whatever, they would have had the meeting, probably no matter what the hell I would have done. Although I was going to strongly encourage them just to table it. Get more experts in, get the research that you may or may not want to hear. But what you need to hear out of me, if you're going to be an advisory board and stand in the way of the improvement, okay, and the enhancement and the growth of your program, well, then you might as well just stick a knife, into the program, because that's what they're doing. So don't make that recommendation based upon this.
And I think
based upon this, because it's your bias that's taking over, that's standing in the way, right, of the patients. You can't throw, and it's such a common phrase, but it's so true here. You can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Yes, is there a small abuse risk? And cannabis use disorder.
I have an addiction to caffeine. I have to have my cappuccino every day, so sue me. Okay.
Of every substance, but more importantly is that patients are going to seek what they're going to seek, and in an unregulated market, it's Delta 8 and 10 and 6 and P and other things.
Just my other question to these.
So they can take their arrow off the target.
But these advisory panels, I'm sorry, if you're any kind of normal person, why don't you look to others that have done it both ways and get the data and then see what's correct? And if you start seeing a lot of states, and how many states actually do have 10% caps?
None. But so Vermont has some kind of whatever, but listen, every attempt is always made by that prohibitionist, Sam,
prohibitionist. There was an article about hospitals, and there was a patient in Maine, and he was going in for surgery, and he had surgery, and he didn't want to go on painkillers after. And so he brought in cannabis. Do you know they discharged him right after surgery because he was administering a lotion to himself? A lotion, and they discharged him.
It's like that cartoon you made for one of the end of my talks. No, Kansas rated a terminally ill cancer patient in the hospital who everybody gave permission to vape, okay, in the hospital, and seriously,
But
so.
seriously, like, this is the thing, why don't they look at stuff, like, look at other states, look at, why are you reinventing the wheel? Look at what others have done first, there was already circles, people have been in the cannabis space for years.
Right, so the real deep
not
down
new.
skeptic, talks about pharma money and
Oh,
donation,
you know that
and
that's
who's
big.
supporting this, that, whatever.
Absolutely, we know
I
that.
tend
that's
to be a
big
little bit
job.
more altruistic and just go with
They're paid off.
I tend to be a little bit more altruistic and go with misunderstanding, not being trained in a med school, no residency for, program for it, and just their patient interaction and their specialty. That's what they do. They see the cannabis use disorder patient. They see the 16-year-old kid who may not be going to high school because he's doing 8 dabs in the basement, but that's a parental thing.
That's a point.
My point to them is, once again, they're always going to have something to do, but you can't look at that sliver of cannabis world as affecting our patients. And when you make statements like cannabis is a medicine and anybody using it over 10% is only using it to get high, then you take away the credibility that you have in what may be valid in the discussion of complications, of risks, of brain development, of all that stuff that we're so cautious in with our discussion with our patients,
Okay, like even like the teenage thing, like if you look at it, like, okay, every high school, we all went to high school, right? So you had the stoners. But you know what? Now, like I'm in touch with a lot of people on Facebook. Those stoners are attorneys, they're physicians. Come on, like really, they didn't lack function skills. Like they were stoners in high school, and now they're extremely productive adults. So you can't you can't make those kind of blanket statements. And I think it's just really sad that panels, some kind of advisory.
Somebody on the panel that uses cannabis that doesn't admit that they use cannabis.
Yeah,
We don't just find stats.
Yeah.
So listen, I went in the green room once again with just the last thought about the AED and to reach up to whoever you believe in, to just. And I think the one thing about it brought society together a little bit. It was one of those moments, and maybe there's another resolution. Ruta, I think, I've talked about having an AED around forever. It wouldn't be the worst thing in the world to have around, God forbid that would ever happen.
No, but you never know. You really never know.
And just to wrap up the thought, as an ER doc, I saw that circumstance way too often, but it's not common in society. In fact, it jostled my memory, and I haven't told you the story yet. Even my 6th year of practice in Barberton, Ohio, there was a player that went down on the field. He was dead when he got into my ER because there was no AED and they did CPR the whole time. And I knew he was dead, and we had to call the code. I had to deal with the family and the coaches and the team. And you know what? I buried it. And I really hadn't thought about it for a number of years. I was actually going to Google it. I guarantee you I can find out the kid's name. I can read the story from way back then, because that's the world of today. But it just goes to show you how people handle those type of circumstances. And once again, I just want to give the most fervent shout out to the first responders of all types, our docs, our nurses, and paramedics, everybody that's out there still dealing with COVID every day. That was a lot of my Twitter feeds, is that we've seen this every day. Young, healthy people that have had this outcome, and never to confuse this with that. But once again, it's an experience that does take a while to get over. So I want to wish, but it was such a strange thing to wish everybody a happy New Year, on that morning. But we're going to do it anyway, because we always go forward with hope.
We do. So we're looking forward to 2023. And
it's going to be a great year. Listen, we're busy, but everybody, listen, anybody that needs medical cannabis and a cannabis card in Florida, do your research, find the appropriate clinic. Plenty of doctors are doing it, but make sure you find one that has the appropriate educational staff and support staff behind them.
And has an office behind them, and not some random phone number and limited access. If your doctor has limited access, not good any situation for any doctor.
It's always nice to know that you're walking into an
office. So everyone take care. We're short on time. I know we have to wrap it up. So happy New Year, everybody. And we'll
see you next week in the green room.